All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the US-ASEAN Youth Council, Colorism in Southeast Asia. The US-ASEAN Youth Council is a nonpartisan organization of young professionals interested in leading US and ASEAN relations. We're cultivating the next generation of Asia policy leaders, as well as re-engaging with the Southeast Asian community. Here we have some amazing panelists that will be sharing some great insight for you all today. First, I would like to highlight Miss Rosie Chung. She is a Southeast Asian creator, entrepreneur, and founder of Asian Pacific Islander Curls, AAPI Curls, a multicultural movement about textured hair and identity. Rosie is leading empowered women of all ages around the globe to live beyond the straight hair standard by embracing their natural curly hair pattern and textures with confidence. Next, we have Miss Rebecca Irby. Rebecca Irby is the founding partner and president of the PEAC Institute. Over the last 10 years, Rebecca has served as an education and technology consultant on diversity and cultural awareness initiatives with the New Jersey Department of Education, Rutgers University, and the National Liberty Museum, Nagoya University, and many others. Rebecca also sits on the advisory board incorporating social skills training into the core programs of schools around the United States. She recently completed a cross-cultural communications textbook for the Japanese Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry. Additionally, she has created business English communications curricula for some of the world's largest organizations, including Red Cross, Toyota, Mitsubishi. When not consulting on education initiatives, she works on social documentaries and charity events. She's debuted her first firm's film, That Day, the Story of Hiroshima Survivor, on August 6, 2013. Her last charity event was on March 2015, when she organized and rode in a 500-kilometer bike ride through the areas affected by the tsunami of 2011. Her last assignment was working at the Dean of Special Education for Brick Pashan Academy in Newark, New Jersey. With the PEAC, she has organized and trained and facilitated youth forums to the NPT PrepCom in 2018, 2019, and 2020, as well as high-level forum conjunctions with the New Zealand Foreign Ministry and the United Nations. Rebecca has spoken about nuclear abolition and heart-centered leadership at Harvard Law School and the Yale Policy Conference, the Pyeongchang Global Peace Forum, the Free Minds People's Forum, and the Busan Democracy Forum, and will be the Barger Leader Institute at the University of Michigan in 2021. And next, we have Ms. Farisya Abdul Shakur. As a daughter of her late father, who was a Malaysian diplomat and education attaché, Farisya will be sharing her overseas experience dealing with discrimination, how to overcome it. Ms. Farisya has over 11 years of professional working experience in corporate communications, PR, marketing, and business development. She has a diploma in communications and media studies from the University Technology Mara and a bachelor's degree in public relations from Deakin University, Australia. Ms. Shakur is currently the business development and special project manager with Direct English Malaysia, Melewar Learning Resources. Apart from her full-time work in education and training sector, she is also the freelance professional MC, moderator, voiceover talent, professional speaker, and youth mentor. And she has also delivered talks to her students from various institutions of higher learning in the country, and also to the young Malaysian diplomats from Wisma Putra Institute of Diplomacy and Foreign Relations. She is also active in education advocacy via social media and is given the recognition as a 70 rising personalities on LinkedIn in Malaysia 2020 by Marketing in Asia. We also have Ms. Elena Wong. She is an incoming global focal point for the United Nations Major Group of Children and Youth Migrations Working Group, as well as the co-founder of Colors of Edinburgh, a UK-based social project promoting self-expression and accurate narratives around refugees and asylum seekers. She has also co-organized the roundtables of consultation with UNICEF and UNESCO and co-facilitated the Partnerships Roundtable at the Migrations Youth Forum 2021. It was a contributor to the expert group meetings on the draft of the 2020 Migration Report with the United Nations ESTAP and is currently communications intern at Afloton International. And she's also a representative of the Young Presidents Organization Impact Network and has also strategized and co-led diversity and and inclusion campaigns on the education sectors. And she currently holds a BA Liberal Arts from King's College London and an MSc Sociology Global Change from the University of Edinburgh, focuses on race, displacement, development, and post-colonial studies. Last but not least, we have Ms. Sarah Pu. She is the founder and CEO of Kai Essentials, a social business of Filipino artisan-made skincare, lifestyles, and discovered the disparity and lack of representation with Filipino coconut oil. And that was just the start. Sarah is the passionate in honoring her cultural heritage, which is a modern artisan-made goods, and shares that natural skincare has a deeper meaning for her as a person of color with her dominant skin whitening industry that dominates the Asian beauty market. So from that, we would like to hear from our panelists to see if they would also like a quick follow-up to highlight what they're going to discuss today.
Hi there. Yeah, I'll just echo on that. So I'm a founder of a Filipino coconut skincare company. And I remember when I was talking about natural skincare, I was also speaking on as an Asian person that, you know, colorism is alive and well in our community, and how natural skincare is also a stance against skin whitening ingredients. And that is something that's really prevalent in the Philippines and throughout Asia. And so I'm really grateful to have this space to talk about this with all of you ladies.
Sure, if anyone else wants to briefly say a couple points before we get started in our discussion.
Sure. My name is Rebecca, and as you mentioned, I'm the co-founder and executive director of PEAC Institute, but I also am the founder of a media organization, and we do a lot of work in conjunction with the nonprofit. But what we're focusing on is systemic racism, climate, and gender issues. So it's been really fascinating digging into this topic from kind of a different lens, but I'm just so excited to be here and learn from the other amazing women on this panel. I'm super excited about the hair and skincare, to know more about that, because under these braids are super curly hair like Rosie. So I'm very excited about that. I think it's really amazing the space that you've provided, because these conversations don't happen. I'm mixed, half, my father is Jamaican and Mohawk, and my mom is Indonesian and Dutch. And I often just feel like there is nowhere for me. And I kind of get from all sides that I don't really fit anywhere. And this idea of colorism has been such a huge part of my life, and I think it impacts the work that I do. So I'm really excited to have this space to discuss it.
Sure, so from that, we're gonna go, I'm sorry.
I was just going to chime in after Rebecca and just say I'm also excited that we have a space where we can talk about just really important issues. And in addition to colorism, and when we talk about hair textures and what is known as texturism, those things play a part in the multidimensional experiences that many of our community members face, but we haven't had an opportunity to really talk about it. So I feel like this is just one step forward where we can start having these conversations that are much needed in our community.
Perfect, thank you for that. Does anyone else want to say anything briefly? Okay. Okay, from there, we're just going to go get started. So the first question I would like to ask our distinguished panel is, what is the definition of colorism within the context of the Southeast Asian diaspora?
I feel that I should have had like a definition from the dictionary or something, but the way that I understand colorism is a discrimination of melanin. And I had saw that somewhere, and that completely relates to me. And I think that each and every one of us, we carry it with us, and it's something that is a part of us when we're in our professional lives and our personal lives. And so that's the best definition I can give here: a discrimination of melanin.
Colorism, I would describe it in like in the most simple definition, it's been a mechanism in which using the shade of someone's skin is the way in which it determines an individual's life outcomes. And it's used to distinguish a person's access to privilege, and equally used to determine the lack of preferential treatment a person will be restricted from. So whether, regardless of what spectrum you fall on, based on the color of your skin, that determines the way in which you're going to be treated by other people.
I would echo, I think I wholeheartedly agree with what the two panelists just shared. And the other thing that I think is important for us to keep in mind is this attainment of whiteness. And that's why colorism exists. And this idea that there is the majority culture or preference, which is white, and the closer you are to white, the more privilege you have. So this idea of colorism, and to me, is the lighter you are, the more privilege you have, and the darker you are, the less privilege you have. But what is different with colorism versus racism is that it's normally within your own community. So to your question, Vannary, how does this apply to the Asian community? Within the Asian community, or within a community of people who are mixed, the lighter you are, the more opportunities you have, and you're seen at like the stereotypical Asian, like very smart and quiet, and you're given kind of this pass, like you're almost white and we really like you guys. You don't cause us too much trouble. So as long as you fit over here, like you're not quite a minority and you're not treated really like a minority. But then as you get down the spectrum and you get darker and darker and coming from different places, like then there's more and more racism. And even within our own communities, like we see that and experience that.
Yeah, definitely. And I also want to say, like, I know perhaps a slightly different diaspora where I'm based in Amsterdam and in Europe. So we don't have quite as much of that sort of model minority focus as the US does, but there's definitely a big lack of awareness of the Southeast Asian diaspora that exists here. Shocking when you think that, the Dutch, for example, in the UK colonized basically most of Southeast Asia, but then they still see Asian as, Chinese or East Asian, and they're very unaware of the Southeast Asian minority. And then in that sense, they also tend to privilege the ones which happen to be fairer skinned, and the darker skin you are, they'll be like, well, what are you then? Kind of this attitude of, well, erasure in a way. And I can see it even happening within the Southeast Asian diaspora itself and the Southeast Asian community that comes from Southeast Asia. So when they come over for university, when they come over for work, and there's very much this idea of, parents or grandparents asking what, how fair are you? And when I go back home, after having been, exposed to the winter lack of sun, and my grandma going, oh, you're so fair, that's so nice. I'm like, no, this is my lack of vitamin D, and we shouldn't have this attitude anymore. And so I think it's definitely something that prevails, and a lot of the ancestors, well, the grandparents and that kind of thing, keep feeding it to us, even though we know better. So yeah.
Yeah, I can also relate to that. And similar to how Rebecca was saying, I'm also of mixed race. So I'm half Filipino, half British, and I was born in Hong Kong, spent my childhood there, but not feeling enough within both cultures. And especially from my Filipino side, when I was growing up, I'd constantly hear like, oh, like the white didn't really get into you, or like, oh, I hope that it, and it's just the fact that these things are okay to be said is so crazy. And so it is something within our own families. And like Rebecca brought up, that it is within our own communities. And so yeah, and when I think about Southeast Asian and colorism as well, it is, when we talk about Asian representation, we're very much not included in that. And that goes from the media. And then I've even had to remind people that Asians are people of color sometimes, which is, just shows you how much work needs to be done.
Yeah, sorry. I think if like also another point adding to that is you can see how much that Hollywood and media still lumps us all together, like that recent film Raya and the Last Dragon, which actually was pretty good. But the fact that they said Asian movie, Southeast Asian, well, let's just cast anyone who's Asian, and half the film's cast are actually of East Asian descent. And that just kind of shows that they see it as still as a monolith, and that needs to really change.
Sure. So our next question is, what is your experience in dealing with colorism? How did you overcome it? And in general, how does these mindsets affect the general diaspora, the actions overall?
As a bit more fair skin, I'll let other people take this one.
I see Rosie jumped in, so I'll let you go. And then I'll
Okay, all right, I'll tell you a story. So in my younger years, my mother never really made any remarks about my skin color. As an adult, however, like suddenly I was too much of a lot of things according to her. Like I was too curly, too curvy, and too dark. And she was always begging me to get a Japanese straightening perm or to go to the gym with her and to use these whitening soaps that she was always purchasing. And I assumed that the sudden call to attention to my skin color as I got older had to do with the fact that she was concerned about how presentable I was to society as an adult. And it was as if I lost the magic of my childlike spirit by becoming too much of what society dictates as a woman, like having large breasts and a big butt, or having hair that is associated with being wild or being provocative. And somehow my darker skin color was also a part of that problem of how aggressively women-like I was becoming. And I feel like I'm not too far off from like alluding and contrasting all of this to the concept of the stereotype known as like the lotus flower, which defines Asian women as like feminine and passive and fragile. And who I became as a woman was the complete opposite of it. So she had to call attention to that because it was something that she needed to fix. And in terms of like how I've addressed that with her, I would say like I'm really terrible at listening to my mother. So in my eyes, saying no and standing up for myself like was a way for me to really practice my independence, which again like goes against the grain of what Asian women are taught. We're taught to be like submissive and passive, or like that's even the assumptions that people have about us. So just being able to express that rebellion against society simply by not participating in the utilization of whitening soaps and doing what I can to like show off the goldenness of my complexion was just like really important for me.
Thank you for sharing that story. I feel very fortunate. My mother, she's Dutch and Indonesian. She didn't really know what to do with my hair when I was younger. So she would always brush it, and then I would have this like really crazy frizzy pyramid thing on my head. So like my hair growing up, hair has always been such an integral part of identity, I think, and it's so sensitive. And I remember when I was younger, my father's side of the family is Jamaican. We're not very close with him, but a lot of the family, everybody gets together for barbecues and like everybody braids hair. I hadn't started doing braids again until about 3 years ago. But when I was younger, and I did these myself, and I braid hair because I always braided my cousin's hair. And it got to a point when I think I was about 6 or 7 where they were like, Rebecca, we're not going to braid your hair anymore. It doesn't stay in. Like you're too late. Like it's not for you. But you're really good at braiding our hair, so continue. So, and I was little, and I was just like, oh, okay, I guess that's just not something that I can do. And I never thought about it. And then fast forward many, many years, I was living in Japan, and it was interesting that you mentioned the Japanese straightening, Rosie, because I ended up moving to Japan. I lived there for 5.5 years. And again, I go to the salon, and the first time I get a haircut, it was insane. And I had a friend brought me to another salon because they tried to fix it. And he convinced me that there was no one in Japan who could cut my hair, and that I needed to get a Japanese straightening perm. And I was like, okay, because I was there for work, and like at that moment, my hair looked insane, and I couldn't go into public looking like that. And I was like, okay, I haven't had a relaxer since I was a teenager, so let's see what this is about. And being in Japan, I also did not realize that in most of the soap and almost all of the lotion, everything is whitening. And I don't read Japanese, so it took me a little while to realize what was happening, because my hair is straight, my skin is getting lighter, everyone's calling me white. And I was like, I have never in my life been called white. Like, whoa, what is this? That experience had such a big impact on me personally and professionally. When I moved back from Japan, the perception, and I didn't realize that it had sunk into my head, but the perception that I had of myself was that of being white. And then it was a very, very dramatic kind of reset coming back to America, because you are instantly reminded that no, you are not. As soon as I got back to America, even with the straight hair and with the lighter skin, people were like, you're not quite white. What are you? And it got back to people constantly. I mean, and like strangers on the street asking me, what are you? I can say that I get that question, and I've gotten it throughout my entire life. The only time I am never asked what I am is when I have braids. And that was what I realized when I came back to America. I chopped off all my hair because the straightening was, you can't come back from that. It's one thing to know about Japanese straightening, you have to cut that out. There is no coming back from it ever. So I had super crazy short hair. I hated it. And a friend recommended box braids. And I was like, I don't have hair for box braids. I can't do that. And they're like, Rebecca, you have some of the thickest hair we've ever seen. Like, stop it. And I was like, you know what? I know how to do it. I was embarrassed and I was scared to go and ask for someone to do it, to go to a salon, because I was afraid that people would make fun of me, say that I'm appropriating a culture, even though it was a part of my culture, but it was still this like huge weight. It took me a week to put the box braids in myself, but I did it, and it was such an amazing experience. And I think, so for me, the travel through this colorism has been through my hair and through the expression of it, and me feeling confident and comfortable in my cultures and being able to express them in myself and with my hair. So that was a long story, I'm sorry, but that's what I got.
Yeah, I can so relate to that when you were talking about the what are you question. I mean, I get that a lot as well. And even if it's not outwardly said, I can tell that that's what they're getting to. And sometimes I just call it out. Like, if you want to ask like what my ethnicity is, not where I'm from, you know? So many issues with that. And also with like the backhanded compliments that are just so rooted in colorism. We like in my family and community and stuff, it's like we keep like holding up this idea of that your proximity to whiteness is better. And so same with you, Rosie. When I was younger, my mom took me to the hair salon and got my hair straightened when I was 10 years old. And then I got it straightened 3 other times. And I do believe that getting my hair straightened chemically at such a young age ruined my hair, like, you know, changed my texture of my hair forever. But then the compliments that I would get that, oh, like your hair is better, like being straight, like, and we, you know, it's all rooted in this colorism. And even when I first moved to LA and I was a commercial model, every single time I would go on set, the makeup artist would have so many issues with my skin because she would say, oh, it's just not like darker skin. It's like got these different tones. Like it's just too many shades. And they would always remark on how difficult it was to get my face to be like one shade and how they'd have to use like 5 million foundations. And I'm like, yes, that's my reality as well. And also, you're not here to, you know, make me feel bad about it. And so those have been my personal experiences with colorism. And kind of with Rosie, what she was saying about, you know, you just realize that if our ultimate goal is to live a full, passionate life and be independent, that we have to break all of those, you know, even small like comments that are from family, even in that workspace that I was in, because it's the only way to feel like your authentic self.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, like, I wouldn't say I've had to deal with much colorism directed at me, but I really see it at, in a lot of ways, directed at other people. And also, like, when I went to international school, I think I didn't realize it then, or it took me many years after that in university to really come to terms with a little bit with the white worship that existed in those spaces, and also how much trying to fit in at that age really had an effect where even if I wasn't darker skin naturally, because I was in this white space where being tan was something that was really cool, and all the Asian girls who were seen as desirable were all tan, and they would all look like they just, you know, stepped off Baywatch kind of thing. So I was like, oh, I need to get tan. So I would go and tan myself, and then I go home, and my grandma's like, why you do that to yourself? You're so dark now. I'm just like, no, grandma, this is a good thing. And what I realized later was that there was just like two, you know, expectations of beauty, two expectations of a kind of like a proximity to whiteness, colorism that was going on there. And so I think especially when we go back home and talk to our families, whether it's diaspora, whether it's back in Southeast Asia itself, it's so important for us to continue to like try and help educate our family members on it, call them out. I think the number of times that I call my dad out now for these passive aggressive racist comments that he'll make about people that he's a naturally critical person, but you know, just people on the street, or friends of friends, but he'll say like, oh, that person got really dark, and he'll say something like hakseyan, which in Cantonese means like, oh, very scary. And I'm like, why are you saying that? Like, what do you mean by that? Let's talk about this. I think it's something that we should keep doing, even though it's uncomfortable.
Sure. So let's go ahead and move on to our next question. What is the defining moment where you started to love the skin that you're in?
I think as like Rosie was talking earlier about like being really good at saying no to your mom, I think just the journey of me as a founder for a natural skincare company, and just realize and finding community, and you realize like how important representation is and how that matters so much. And yeah, it's just continuing to, even in the smallest conversations, take that stance and realize that if you're not going to do it, no one, you know, no one is. And so that's how it starts, and it makes a difference.
For me, talking about that representation part of it, Sarah, I would say that a defining moment for when I felt valuable in my own skin is when I started to show my face and myself more often on my social media accounts. So initially I was just like curating and publishing photos that inspired me. And then I started to be the person in front of the camera, and seeing myself be the person that I wish I saw representing me in the media on my own social media account, like, was incredibly empowering. And when I published my first YouTube video talking about my curly hair experiences, I realized that I just needed to be my own role model, and that I was capable of being that for others too. So I would say that that was a moment for me.
I similarly, I think once I came back to America and kind of defending, even just to myself, who I am and how I want to represent myself, how I want to represent my organization, what that looks like, all of this pressure, as I was working in the United Nations. So there's so much pressure to go back to like the super straight, like hair and very polished dress, and just completely something that I am not. And the whole purpose of my organization was to disrupt the UN and start bringing in faces like ours, younger voices, younger perspectives. But there was definitely a moment in there where I was like, how am I supposed to make space for people and get into this space? Like, do I have to go back to being this person and this version, this like fake white version of myself, or can I be myself? And it was a very scary moment, but I chose, it was like, you know, if I'm taking this stand, I'm making this stand for myself and for all of our sisters out there who don't have space. So like, I have to show up authentically. And if it doesn't work, then I know that there's so much more work to do. But I feel like I've been very fortunate, and I feel like the more that I am myself and the more authentic I am, there's certainly been organizations, funders, even who have spoken out against me and what I'm doing because they don't think it's proper. But I've also found an amazing community and an amount of support. And at the end of the day, that's where my attention and where my loyalties are, is to this community, not to these structures that are telling us that we are supposed to be one way, we're supposed to look one way, and we're supposed to do things in a certain way. So it was very scary and hard, but I'm so proud. I'm very proud of myself for doing that. And you know, it's something I think having WCAPs and organizations like the one, Vannary, that you're starting, these spaces are so incredibly important, because I don't know if I would have had the wherewithal and the courage to do that without the support of these groups.
Hi, everyone. Hi, I'm Farisya from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Hi, Rebecca. Apa kabar? You're half Indonesian, right? Yeah, apa kabar? Yeah, so it's similar, Malaysian and Indonesian language. So I just want to share my experience with all of you here. I was previously racially discriminated before when I was studying overseas, and how I handle with it is being positive. So I didn't, you know, I didn't reply to the abuser. I just keep thinking positive and say, hey, you know what? It's better for me to just, you know, keep calm, be quiet, stay calm, and do my work. Because at that time I was working part-time at a restaurant as a waitress, and I was in my second year of study. Doing my degree. So that was when I was studying in overseas outside of Malaysia. So I felt really, 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 really hurt at that time, because that person told me like, oh, do you understand English? I was like, what? So it's like, of course I understand English. It's like, hey, you just have to be kind with one another. I mean, like, you know, even though I'm a student and I'm an international student, I'm trying to, you know, make some extra income to support my studies in overseas. And I'm just like everyone else. So for me, my message is simple: be kind, because at the end of the day, we're all human. Because, you know, it doesn't matter what race we are, whether we're black or white, yellow, pink, green, whatever. At the end of the day, we're all human. We're all human race. So for me, how I handle with that abuser is I just took her order. Because my manager, the restaurant manager, was like sitting across from the next table. So I just took the order with calm, go to the kitchen. And I didn't cry. I just say, okay, just handle this calmly. Because, you know, when you work in a restaurant, you're working part-time as a restaurant waitress, you're in customer service. So you have to, you know, you have to serve your customers. But the customer was being rude to me. But at the end of the day, I try to, you know, keep thinking positive and say, okay, you know, just don't, you know, don't reply to her. So what I did was I just, you know, serve her food, take her order, serve her food, and I smile at her and I say, thank you. And for me, my message is, you know, why do we have to hate? What do we get from hate? You know, at the end of the day, we're all, you know, living in the same planet. We're human, and there's no need to discriminate. So that's my 2 cents. And I also want to share about my mother's experience. So my mom, she used to walk inside a branded store, and it's one of the biggest brand. It's a branded handbag brand, and she wears the hijab. My mom wears the tudung, the hijab. So I'm Malay Muslim, and my mother was wearing the hijab, and she walked into the store, and she said she wants to purchase that bag. And then the branded store manager told her, "Oh, I don't think that you can afford that." So I was like, what? So at the end of the day, it's like, hey, it's your customer. Customer is always first. You serve your customer first, regardless where they came from, what they do. They're your customer. You have to be loyal to your customer, because without your customer, the customer, you know, the customer supports your brand. So my mom was like, she was like, what? And then I told my mother, like, oh, it's okay, Mom. I was talking to her in Malay. It's like, oh, tak apa, Ma, it's okay. Let me talk to the manager. So, so at the end of the day, she didn't buy the handbag. She just walked out of the store. So she was like, my mom was like really pissed off. But then I told her, it's okay. It's okay if, you know, when people are unkind, we reply them back with kindness, because there's no need to be rude. There's no need to be kind, even though that person treat you bad. So what we did was we just left the store. That's it. Yeah. So it's her loss, because my mom wants to purchase that bag. So it's the store loss, you know, because my mom wants to purchase that handbag. So at the end of the day, it's like, you just have to, you know, you don't just judge someone whether if that person, you know, walk into a store and wearing a t-shirt and jeans and a flip-flop. You might never know that person just bought the handbag. Yeah, so yeah, that's from my previous experience. So it's like, it doesn't matter like where you come from. It doesn't matter your ethnicity. It doesn't matter your language, your religion. So for me, I'm being a proud Muslim. I'm a Muslim. I'm a Malay from Malaysia, and I'm proud of my ethnicity. I'm proud of my race. I'm proud being Malaysian, and I have lived in America before, as my late father used to work there. And I have lived in several countries before too, following my father, because he is an ex-Malaysian diplomat. And for me, my message to everyone there, especially, you know, what's happening right now in the States, is just devastating. It's insane. And for me, being someone who have lived in California, in Pasadena before, back when my late father was posted there under the Malaysian government, MSD and Petronas, for me, I feel, you know, part of being American, because I was there for almost 4 or 5 years. I go to school there. I went to Pasadena Elementary School in Pasadena, Hamilton School, Pasadena in California. So even though I'm Malaysian, but I have experience living in the States. So for me, what has happened, you know, with the shooting in Atlanta is just so devastating for me, being a Malaysian, even though right now I am in the other side of the continent. I'm in Malaysia, I'm in Southeast Asia, but I feel close to America because I used to live there. I used to grow up there in the States. So for me, it's just, you know, watching the news on CNN, the shooting is like, this gotta stop. You gotta stop this.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought it up, because if there's anything that I feel that I want to bring to our community is to bring more awareness for Stop Asian Hate. And as well with my mom, she has a Filipino accent, and growing up, I always was witnessing to discrimination that she would face. That was like, do you understand this? Or not understanding what she was saying and making a big deal about it. And I'm like, no, it's your issue. Like, you're not understanding her. And just so many things. And even just with the pandemic, I feel like it's, you know, with the US president, you know, and his racist remarks, it's really caused so much pain. And, you know, it starts with like death stares, or like not like stares of like, what are you here? Like, stay away. And now it's grown to attacks on our elderly. And I've had to have conversations with my parents to look out for themselves. And then my husband is Korean and my in-laws are in their 70s and they live in Kansas. And so, you know, and then seeing the lack of the reporting on this as well. And the fact that I feel so sad that it took a mass shooting for anyone to even say, oh, like there's a rise of anti-Asian hate crimes. And even during February time with the Lunar New Year, I saw so many companies putting out, you know, promotions and gift sets for the Lunar New Year, and they profit off the Asian market. You're talking about your mom, you know, wanting to buy that handbag. But when it comes to, you know, our community being under attack, they're not there. And I wrote an article for Well and Good calling out, you know, wellness brands that take a lot of our wellness traditions. So much of wellness traditions is rooted in Southeast Asian culture. When we look at yoga, acupuncture, with the Philippines, coconut oil. And so my personal belief is that if you benefit from Asian wellness, that you have a responsibility to stand up when our community is going through these hate crimes. And it's still ongoing, you know. And I mean, I follow this news outlet called Next Shark, and the attacks on our community with elderly, and it's happening in the street in broad daylight. Like, it's something that you know, really we need. Like, it's not enough for us to stand up. Like, people need to be encouraged to listen, and we need, you know, our allies to outwardly support our community.
Yeah, so just to kind of follow up on what's been said, so thank you so much, everyone, for sharing your experiences. But you know, with the recent events of the six Asian Americans that were killed at the salon, the media deemed the killer having, you know, a bad day, instead of actually talking about what it actually is. You know, it was a mass murder. So how can we as AAPI, or from the Southeast Asian diaspora, the Asian diaspora in general, come together to support one another, but to both fight colorism and unify as a people to kind of move forward? You know, how can we do this during Stop Asian Hate?
Yeah, so if I may say something as well, like, even though I'm not based in the US, there's been a rise in the UK too, and it's something that we see often is that a trend. Something happens in the US, and 3 months later it's in the UK, and I think it's true for, you know, populism. It's true for the Asian crimes. And there was a guy the other day who was attacked just outside of Chinatown, actually, and there was a YouTuber who was live streaming getting into an Uber or something weird, but he saw it and he ran over to help. But I think something that really needs to be done is that, you know, the AAPI community in both places, and also, you know, Southeast Asian and Asian communities in the UK, as well as in the US, need to both be like supporting each other. You know, I think there's such a strong community of women out there. There's such a strong community of minorities, and we should really be supporting each other in these ventures. For example, there was, I think, a really great initiative in New York where they put together Support Your Local Chinatown initiative, where they basically digitize a lot of these restaurants, which are mom and pop operations, to make sure that they can have access to takeout market and make sure they have access. And I think one big thing is that so many of us speak up for other communities as well. And I think we should be proud and unashamed to speak up for our own community. And this is something that I struggle with sometimes. And I've thought about it. I was like, you know, throughout BLM, I was having all these conversations with people. I was sharing so much stuff with friends and having conversations. And then when it came to Asian hate, like in the UK, suddenly I felt hesitant to share it. And then I was like, why am I feeling scared to speak up for my own community? And I could see how it's tied to, you know, a lot of these cultural things of we should just take it, or you know, we should just kind of like move on or be okay with it and swallow these things inside. But you know, we should be unashamed of being proud of a community. We should be unashamed of looking for community as well. So often this proximity to whiteness makes us feel like we need to distance from our diaspora community, that we need to distance from identities of being Asian, of, you know, being mixed race Asian and things as well. And I think finding our way back to finding this solidarity, back to finding a supportive community that looks out for each other, who understands the feelings, and who is willing to uplift, both speaking out against hate, but also the need to have solidarity amongst minority groups. This is so important.
I'm gonna piggyback on this concept of speaking up, and I'm gonna push for this particular call to action, but storytelling, speaking up and speaking out is the greatest challenge to the model minority myth. People assume that we don't have a voice, and I feel like the media and society has essentially tried to erase our voices, but storytelling is where that stops. Storytelling is always going to be the medium in which future generations understand and know how to preserve our legacies and establish connectedness with each other. And we need to be able to lead by example, specifically by speaking up about our own experiences regarding anti-Asian racism and the microaggressions, the sexualization, and all those other harmful stereotypes that harm the success of our community. So I really just feel like we need to have more examples, especially of women who are strong and speaking up.
I love that, what both of you were just mentioning, and I think it's so incredibly important. And I think I want to echo what you guys said, but I see it as needing to be very, very strategic right now, and kind of a two-pronged approach where it's so incredibly important for our community to find community, to actually come together and find community. So having conversations where it is just the AAPI community, I think is really important to build the strength and the courage to, as Rosie was just saying, to have the wherewithal to even start talking about these stories, because I don't think that really exists just yet. Vannary and your team, you're really working hard on creating that space, and I think it's so incredibly important. And then the other piece to the solidarity within our own community, but then the connection to and understanding that we are minorities. And just as Alina was saying, like, and that's why I think it's got to be two ways. Like, we need to have that conversation amongst ourselves and like really start pushing that and that understanding that we are minorities, and that because we do have proximity to whiteness, we are closer, we have a lot more power than other communities. And yes, we're experiencing a tremendous amount of hate and hate crimes and terrorism right now against our community, but we still, even in this moment, we have to remember how much privilege and agency we do have because we do have that proximity. So, you know, building up our own resources within our own community to then understand that the next big step is full solidarity. Like, the changes that we're talking about and the things that need to happen, they're not going to happen if it's just the Black community, the Latin community, the Asian community, the Muslim community, the Arab community. There are so many communities, and I think the system in which we live has worked perfectly in separating all of us. And that is how, even though whiteness in the world is not the majority of the skin tone, it is the majority because we've separated ourselves. So I am 100 million% behind Rosie's call to action for storytelling. And then, but I want to incorporate what Alina said as well and have both of those. I think we can do both, and I think we need to do both.
Thank you so much. So our last, oh, I'm sorry, Faresia, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with everyone here. Definitely digital advocacy with the power of social media, the storytelling, and storytelling is very important for us to, you know, share our stories so that it can also inspire and motivate others to do the same. And we need to always, you know, hashtag Stop Asian Hate. And like, for example, we can do it in our own language. Like, for example, I can do it in Bahasa Malaysia in my language, and I can also do it in English. So bilingual. So I think it's really important for us to, you know, use a social media platform as a voice, as a platform for us to voice out the concern that has been happening right now to stop racism and stop Asian hate.
Yeah, and also just to talk more about storytelling, even the history of our community. And I think that, you know, we've talked about the model minority myth and how Asians are put into this monolith. And when we talk about, you know, there's this notion that the Asian community as well, like we've had to remind people that Asians are people of color. And when we talk about Asians, most of the statistics that we see refer to the East Asian community. And when we look at the Southeast Asian community, 1 in 4 Southeast Asian New Yorkers are living under the poverty line. And so we are not well, you know, and even looking at our history, my husband and I were watching a PBS documentary, and 90% of the railroads in America were built by Asians. And only when at the very end of the projects did they bring the white Americans to take the pictures. And so Asians and Southeast Asians have, I mean, the first Asians in America were Filipinos. And that was centuries ago, you know? And so there's also this lack of representation in the history books and education. And then when we talk about Asian representation, we need to make sure that we're, you know, not grouping us together as well, because then misinformation happens and different, you know, and people get the wrong idea. And so I think also with the storytelling, knowing our history and listening to and there are voices out there, you know, it's just that, are we encouraged to listen? Are we encouraged to use our platform and share their knowledge? So many amazing like historians and podcasts and community groups like API Curls, what Rosie created, are sharing our stories. We need to just be encouraged to pay that forward and share it, because that's the only way that it's going to, you know, it's going to spread.
Okay, so our last question to ask our panel before moving on to see what the audience has is, what are some ways that what you're currently doing that we can help support outside of the call of action that all of you have mentioned?
Oh, I can start really quickly since mine's more short, but because I work with predominantly youth working in either for migration spaces or diaspora communities or within them. If you are one of them, and that means 31 and younger, sorry if anyone's older than that here, but you know, get involved in, because one of the things that we are doing is that we want to highlight the fact that minority and migrant and diaspora voices and youth voices have value in policy making decisions, have value at these tables, and you know, not just for advocacy, but in terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of innovation, we're highlighting that these need to be valued, need to be funded, need to be, you know, put on a pedestal almost of as being like, your community can be fixed only by people in the community, and this is what we're trying to do. So if you know of anyone like that or are them yourself, feel free to reach out to us, and we would love to help capacity build or highlight or try and get you funding from the governments that colonize this.
I'll go next, or okay, Rebecca. Well, we'd love to see more story submissions and have the opportunity to interview individuals through the API Curls Headliner content series. And one very small but incredibly impactful thing that anyone can do is to show someone else what our feed looks like so that they can see the faces and individuals of our community. And I say that because it's powerful for someone to see a community that's never been properly represented before. And you know, like they say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but I'm betting with all my confidence that API Curls will leave you speechless when you see the existence of the API Naturally Curly community.
It's funny you say that because I literally I opened your website up right before because I wanted to not make sure I didn't forget the name of your company because I need some help with my curls, and I will agree with you that it is so beautiful to see all of these amazing light and dark brown faces with beautiful curls shining back at me. So yes, Rosie, thank you for creating that. And I'm excited to learn more about it and see how I can get involved. When I take these braids out, I'm going to be contacting you to help me with my curls. But with that being said, my organization, Midheaven. So with PEAC Institute, we do a lot of advocacy work. But what I've been focusing on most, and this goes back to all of the points of community building and my belief that storytelling is so incredibly important. I created a platform for storytellers, and that's midheaven.network. We're doing a number of shows. We've done a number of hybrid events. So we have a studio where we have production, we have producers, and we have people who can help you produce your story. And we also have the platform in which you can share your story. So we're just starting out, but we've gotten a lot of traction so far. It's been really amazing. Vannary has been a part of some of my panels, which has been so wonderful. But I just want to put out there that we are looking for content. We are looking to share stories like this. Even Rosie, if you have content that you want to share and get out more widely, things like that. Like we're here to support and uplift the voices of the minority communities, and that includes all of them. And I guess because I kind of come from all of them, so I feel very connected to ensuring that there are platforms and places for us to do this really, really, really important work. And along with the platform is the nonprofit side. So we do have access to research and other things that can kind of help you develop your story if that's something that you're interested in.
Yeah, I'm happy to go next. So as a final note, if anyone is looking for clean skincare, would love for your support at kaiessentials.com. We also work directly with artisan communities in the Philippines. And so we have fashion and home and jewelry. And I also mentioned I wrote an article for Well and Good, and I would really appreciate if you could share it within your own communities, because at the end of the day, for us to be able to be given the platform to share more AAPI stories, we need people to listen. And also to share with your communities that benefit from Asian wellness, and to share to them that our community is going, it needs their allyship, and if they benefit in any form, that they have a responsibility. So I would love if you could share the link to the article.
Hi, everyone. Before we end, I want to share, besides digital advocacy and digital marketing on social media that we can do to increase our awareness on Stop Asian Hate, we can also go to schools, universities, kindergarten, and, educate the students, educate the students, kindergarten, schools, universities, and educate the young people on, on Stop Asian Hate, and it goes on not just on social media platform, but we can also do it face to face, and go to the universities or school and all that, and kindergarten to educate more young people on, stop the Asian hate and discrimination against Asians. So there's a lot of things that we can do.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So we have one question from the audience. I'm going to.
Oh, sorry, no, that was me. Rebecca was asking for the link for the article. And
no, yes, there was a question earlier. Oh, you're fine. Excuse me. Okay, so the question is, what moves do you see in the beauty modeling industry taking to be more inclusive of Southeast Asian bodies and faces? And then the other part of the question, so I have to scroll down. We are definitely underrepresented, but I don't know. Oh, sorry. So that's the question. What moves do you see in the beauty modeling industry taking to be more inclusive of Southeast Asian bodies and faces? If anyone wants to take on this question.
I'll go ahead and start that answer. So I would say what I'm seeing happening is, especially now after the last year of seeing a lot of brands attempt to take action and take a little bit of accountability for their lack of understanding of DEI and representation. I am starting to notice that brands are trying to integrate more diversity into their campaigns and who they're hiring for like their photo shoots and the modeling. And I want to be able to offer a suggestion. I really believe, like, when I think about like who we could be working with to get better representation of our communities, I would definitely say start with our own community. There are brands that, like makeup brands or clothing brands that are Asian owned, who we should be holding accountable to for representing our own communities. And I'm not seeing a lot of that happen. One of the brands that I've worked with, Orsay Cosmetics, is they have developed a product and a formula for foundation that's specifically for the Asian skin. And I'm just so proud to kind of like see a brand take that kind of initiative. But I would say that we should definitely look to support brands that are created by people from our own community and work with them and ask them what they're doing to really uplift and represent our own communities. And then I think just another thing is to make sure that we are being proactive in supporting content creators and influencers and other creatives and artists in the space who are the people that are going to be representing us in these particular media campaigns and stuff like that. And I think that would really support them, because when brands are noticing that people are supporting them, they're going to want to work with them. And that's part of that ecosystem. And I just wanted to offer that.
Yeah, I want to agree with Rosie for sure. Yeah, sure. Coming out to show support for these people that already exist is super important. And you know, I think sometimes we can fall victim to being a bit passive or being a bit like more of convenience. And I think that's partly to do with sometimes what we've been talking about here is that the AAPI and the Asian diaspora community can sometimes be a little bit passive about their own activism, that we need to keep pushing for people to embrace it, keep pushing for people to support activists and these figures. And I think something that is also really great is that the effects that it has on yourself is also so wonderful. You know, finding, for example, YouTubers who are of Southeast Asian descent and who do makeup tutorials, finding actresses who are of Southeast Asian descent. Not that there are many, but the only one I can think of right now is actually, I think, Lana Condor. She's Vietnamese, but that's the only one I can think of. But supporting these people and seeing them on screen, subscribing to their channels, all these kind of things, both supports them and shows there's demand, but also has a profound effect on your own self-worth and your own self-reflection, your beauty, I think. So I think it's about both showing up for your community and reminding others who are still a little bit hesitant about it or don't see the value, what it can really have for yourself and for the wider effect.
Yeah, and I mentioned that when I first moved to LA in my early 20s, I was a commercial model. And so being the outward, like a representation, and that like I've experienced a lot through my work there. And what I experienced was just, again, people of color being grouped in one, kind of looking at like ticking a box. And, you know, I would be thrown around as either the Southeast Asian girl or the Latina girl, basically. And you just see that it's not just important to have our faces in the campaigns, but we really need these brands and for the team to be diverse, because if it starts from there, then it will be done in a very it will be done more authentically, at least, you know. But unfortunately, like, I think that there's still so much work to be done. And I think that it's not about ticking a box. And unfortunately, I still see brands pick and choose and take stuff from Asian culture. Like there was a multi-million-dollar period company brand that named one of their pieces after a Filipino ube dish, and had a Caucasian model, an only Caucasian model, who represented the brand. And also this was while our Asian community is going through this rise of hate crimes. And and so really, you know, when you see that speaking up and demanding more from brands, especially if they're taking, you know, from us or doing performative activism, you know.
Yeah, so I just want to build on that as well. And the pressure, I think, is so important. And also calling out companies who do see as a tick box, or who do see Asian as a monolith, like Disney did, and you know, quite a few others. Too often the only Southeast Asians that they portray are people who are, you know, of fairer skin or of more East Asian descent originally. And that's not okay. And we need to be highlighting the rest of the diversity that exists in the region.
Is there anybody else that wants some last minute thoughts while we wrap up this event? Okay, so we wanted to wish you all a happy Southeast Asian New Year from the US-ASEAN Youth Council. And just to be on the lookout for events, we will be discussing the role of sports diplomacy in the US-Southeast Asia relations. We are going to feature an American basketball player who is playing in the Philippines for the ASEAN Basketball League, as well as a professional Cambodian soccer player, and representatives from ESPN and the National Basketball Association Asia next month. And we are also hosting our Women in ASEAN series, where Obama appointed Ambassador Nina Hatchingen, who is actually the deputy mayor of LA, is going to be discussing her journey through the State Department, as well as Charge d'Affaires. The current Charge d'Affaires for the U.S. mission to ASEAN will be speaking, as well as some representatives for the Beijing consulate as well. So please be on the lookout for that for next month. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. This is wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.